Lost My Body on Bicycle Day, an LSD trip report by BendX, posted to earwood.org October 1st, 2021. The product was white on white blotters, 100 to 110 micrograms per tab. The source was a highly recommended one, and another product of theirs was supposedly tested by a third party and found to be pure LSD and close to 100% of the advertised quantity. Personally, I can't make any statements regarding quality or quantity, but I can tell you what it did to me. The set and setting is I'm around 30 years old, have some experience with MDMA, ecstasy, speed, shrooms, and smoke weed for most of my adult life. Aside from this daily cannabis use, I've had a very sober 2015 so far. I'm very interested in spirituality, especially in non-dualism and concepts like ego loss, transcendence of mind and body, and the beautiful oneness of all are quite familiar to me. Theoretically, i.e. not experienced. I'm not in a very stable place right now though, meaning no real job, no girlfriend, relationship for some years, and no idea how or when this is going to change. For my first time, I decided to trip alone. The friends I would have tripped with weren't available, and I was going to start with 200 micrograms or two 100 microgram white on white blotters. I live with two roommates who are present, and I knew I would be tripping. I trust them, they're good people. The week before, I read a lot of reports and checked out what is scientifically known today. Also, I mildly conditioned myself by always repeating and being aware of the fact, I won't die, and it will be over after a day. I didn't have any special plans. For my first time, I just wanted to see what it'd be like, what would happen, and I was excited. Bicycle Day. I'd gotten the tabs the day before, but it was late and I wanted to start during the day. So I waited one night, which wasn't easy. I was very excited and only slept a couple of hours. Side note, it can be hard to tell if I feel anxious, nervous or excited. I chose to see it as excitement, to stay positive. I started my day leisurely with cereals and fruit and tea, showered and cleaned the apartment a bit. After that, I went outside to walk around in the sun and find a rose which I could pluck and take home. They're supposed to be beautiful on LSD. Also, I'd read King's Dark Tower not long ago. I then prepared my room, meaning water, pen and paper, fresh sheets for my bed, phone on airplane mode, logging out of all social media and opening a few tabs of music. After everything was ready, I took a quick look at the time and, well, I kid you not, 4:20 PM. Let's go. At 4:20 PM, I put two blotters on my tongue, sucked and chewed them around a bit, and then swallowed. I put on the movie Lucy, which was recommended somewhere, and waited. It didn't take long, maybe 15 minutes, and I started to feel something. My hands and feet got sweaty, and my excitement quickly morphed into euphoria. Another 15 minutes later, colours became more vibrant and had a mild glow. By now, the movie had become the least interesting thing to see. I checked for traces by waving my hand, but I didn't see any. It didn't matter though, I was coming up fast. I started laughing, giggling just because I felt so good. It might have been slightly on the hysterical side. At 5:30 PM, pretty much exactly 1 hour into the movie, it started to buffer, so I paused and looked around the room. Textures had started moving. The letters on my keyboard wobbled, and time and space began to stretch. At this point, one of my roommates came by wanting to know how it felt. Hey, is it already kicking in then? What are you seeing? Unbelievable, it's amazing. I could barely talk. Time and space were off. I thought the sentence, but by the time it had reached my mouth, I was already so far ahead in my mind. So much was happening in what I knew must be seconds, but it didn't feel like it. It didn't feel like hours either. I was just registering too much for just 1 second. Every texture was moving. For example, my desk is completely white and smooth except for a scorch mark the size of a quarter. This mark was a pit. It had depth and little geometric forms and lines were tumbling out of it only to dissolve on the white desk. This motivated me to put the paper in front of me and pick up a pencil. With that, I started seeing traces. When I put the pencil to the paper, the point of contact became the source of an abstract drawing which spread out over maybe half the paper. It was amazingly detailed and constantly moving. I have no idea what it looked like. The reports I had read often said that it could be uncomfortable to have non-tripping people around, no matter if they knew or not. I was sure I wouldn't mind having my sober roommates around, but I was wrong. The thing is, they couldn't understand. Our realities were so far apart, and I couldn't communicate to them what I was seeing, and that kind of broke the illusion. With my eyes, I saw unbelievably beautiful patterns on the floor. Through their eyes, I saw a drugged-up idiot staring at a normal floor. It didn't make sense. I couldn't bring the two pictures together. My guess is that it got to do with my insecurities and is not necessarily a characteristic of LSD. At 6:30 PM, around this time, I wanted to explore the apartment. I knew there was the rose in the kitchen and some fruit salad in the fridge. Also, I felt like I had to be a little bit active to show my roommates I was able to, and that everything was actually fine. I felt they wouldn't understand that everything was fine if I was just sitting around tipping a pen to paper. At first I didn't think I could walk, but when I tried, it actually worked. It was really weird though. Everything was moving and the proportions of my body felt wrong. But it worked. I could even dance and jump around to create massive waves where my feet touched the floor. When, after a couple of minutes, I arrived at the kitchen door, I instantly noticed the rose. It was too much to look at. I turned to the fridge, opened it, laughed and closed it again. There was too much going on in there. I could make out the fruit salad, but there was no way I could have gotten out of there. As a side note, looking back, I now think I could have done it, but I didn't even try. My mind said no, and I listened. On the way back to my room, I made a quick pit stop to relieve myself. It was a little weird, but worked fine. As I stood before the door ready to leave the bathroom, I had a brief flash of panic. I wasn't sure if I could open the door. But then, I just did it. And it was easy enough. Still, I got the feeling how the trip could have turned bad there, and I made a mental note to remember that getting out was easy. Back in my room, I sat down at my desk and thought about what to do next. Now, afterwards, I feel like this is a bit of a bad spot. Tripping and not knowing what to do next can't be right. Everything around me was moving in awesomeness, and I didn't want to settle on anything. I didn't want to go deep into anything, and I'm actually pretty sure I was fighting it, or trying to get some control over the experience. I wasn't aware of it. I was just thinking, oh holy crap, what now? I started feeling overwhelmed, so I closed my eyes, and instead of the expected darkness, a whole new space opened up. I instantly named it, or knew its name, to be Headspace. At 7:30 PM, this headspace was the most insane thing I had experienced so far. It wasn't like I was standing or sitting in a space or world similar to ours. I'm not even sure how many dimensions it had, although it was at least partly three-dimensional. But anyway, I could see these bright, abstract patterns move, or rather develop, in this space. It was brighter than my room, and that sensation alone, that I closed my eyes and my surroundings got brighter, was rather disorientating. After a short while, I think, I had figured out a little bit of how it worked. I wasn't a body, but more a cell, or maybe even a point. Sensations had different representations from the other world, and whatever I heard I would also see as patterns of light, and the sounds came from new directions. When, for example, I heard one of my roommates, I logically knew they were to my left, but in my headspace, the sound, well, I don't even know. Maybe that was part of the space, maybe? It was like it had its own location from where it came from. Something like that, but different in actuality. I wanted to listen to music, so I opened my eyes again and instantly got hit by strong vertigo. The change in perspective was too sudden and extreme. First, I'm hanging or hovering in one point and can see, hear and feel the space around me. And then I'm suddenly sitting in my chair looking straight ahead. It made no sense. It felt like both spaces existed simultaneously, and I could switch between them just by opening, closing my eyes, but it made me very, very nauseous. At 8 PM, I barely managed to start a song and put my headphones on. I'd started without really choosing it, Acid Rap by Chance the Rapper. I remember thinking how intense it was and that I, at some point, noticed that it was over. Besides that, I have no memory of listening to a 50-minute plus album. I don't even know if I passed out or closed up or what happened, but I do remember pulling off the headphones, curling up in my bed, and I think I found a place inside my head where I could stay, but for the next 6 to 10 hours, I don't know where or what I actually was. There is very little memory. I think I just remember a few small reality flips. At one time, my other roomie came by and asked if I was okay. I remember this in 2 steps. The first one was waking up with a shock, while simultaneously registering that he was close to me and had asked if everything was alright. The second step is me quickly going back whilst muttering, it's all good, it's all good. There are a couple of similar little events like this, like me suddenly noticing something from the other world, but I have no idea what was happening in my headspace. All that I did know was that I felt very good. At 5 AM, the next clear memory I have is of waking up or coming back from wherever I was. The sky was already bright, so it was probably around 5 AM. I was still seeing visual effects, but way more mellow than before. My body didn't feel quite right, and my hands felt and looked way too big. They were morphing from triple the normal size to more or less normal and back again. The body feeling I had reminded me of the cortical homunculus, which I had to look up. A physical representation, a neurological map of the body. I kept lying in my bed, and probably snoozed for a bit, but after a while I was so bored, I just had to get up. At 8 AM, my visuals were gone completely, but things still looked pretty. I felt very exhausted though, in body and mind, but more or less normal. I knew I was still not fully back, still away from my former self. I was very calm and kind of empty. I took a shower and went outside, seeing that it was a beautiful day, and I'd spend the next 3 to 4 hours walking slowly through nature, occasionally stopping, but mostly wanting to move. I tried to think about what I had experienced, but I don't think I got a better sense of it than I have now, 2 days later. All I know for sure is that by taking the LSD, if it was LSD, I'd opened a door to another world. I'm sure of that, at least. I can't really say what, where, when this world is, what happened there, or who had been there, but I really want to find out. Oh, and there was definitely a vast distance between me on LSD and the me before LSD. This distance alone had created a new perspective on pretty much anything. I just didn't look at anything while so far away, or I don't remember. Here's some of my conclusions after the experience. I'm very sure I was overwhelmed, which wasn't a bad experience, but not really useful either, and I think I wasted a lot of LSD's potential that way. Secondly, it's a trip. You are going somewhere. It really didn't hurt to know a little bit about that place. The more single experiences I read, the better my understanding of what might happen. Set and setting? Well, I now know it is important, probably the most important factor of the trip. I'm not really sure how it works, but before, while, and after the trip, I was happy about having cleaned and decluttered my place, feeling excited, i.e. being nervous but not scared. I was glad I made sure there weren't any disturbances. My sober roommates weren't a huge problem, but they made me feel a little self-conscious and inhibited. So, the next time, I really want to be alone or have everybody tripping. And finally, on the next time, I will again take my time with preparations as they are a part of it. I will take half the dose, so 100 micrograms, maybe even in 2 steps at T0 hours and T plus 2 hours. I have to read about that. I want to put some focus on the difference between open and closed eye visuals, the different worlds, while keeping an open mind for wherever the trip may lead me. But regardless of all this, I wish you all the best in all of the worlds. Happy Bicycle Day, fellow psychonautic enthusiasts. And for anybody who doesn't know, so Bicycle Day, April 19th, it's pretty much like the unofficial holiday for psychonauts. It's to commemorate the actual first acid trip by Albert Hofmann, the man who started it all, I believe in the 40s, 1943. Hofmann was the man who synthesized LSD and then subsequently became the first person in the history of man to actually consciously ingest lysergic acid diethylamide, however you'd like to pronounce it. And famously, He described his trip and rode his bicycle home after ingesting the substance, forever changing humanity. The cultural significance of this moment is pretty unparalleled. It must have been absolutely insane for Hoffman to experience the unique properties of LSD as a psychedelic, and then sort of gift it to the world and influence so many people's consciousness throughout time. And well, it's definitely here to stay, and I can tell you right now, it's definitely influenced my life 100%. By far, out of all the psychedelics, LSD has been the one that really switched the gears in terms of my consciousness. It broke me out of the idea that I am a human and this is all there is, this physical 3D realm, and that there's nothing beyond that. I was very rigid in terms of my worldview and perspective, and LSD completely broke me out of that. There was a lot of suffering involved, especially with the shattering of the paradigm of thought that I was entrenched in. But that's part of the whole process of shedding your skin, ridding yourself of your previous egoic backlog. Comes with a lot of suffering, but that's just part and parcel for how you change and enter the next arc of your conscious evolution as a being, as existence, as I amness. Here's a funny little bit of trivia about the history of Bicycle Day. So, according to Wikipedia, on April 19th, 1943, Albert Hoffman ingested 0.25 milligrams or 250 micrograms of LSD, and between 1 and 2 hours later, Hoffman experienced slow and gradual changes in his perception. He asked his laboratory assistant to escort him home. Due to wartime restrictions on automobile use, they made the journey by bicycle. On the way, Hoffman became anxious as objects in his field of vision wavered and distorted, as if seen in a convex mirror. Upon arriving home, Hoffman's condition rapidly deteriorated as he struggled with feelings of anxiety, alternating in his beliefs that the next-door neighbour was a malevolent witch, that he was going insane, and that the LSD had poisoned him. I mean, imagine putting yourself in his shoes. You probably would think it's some form of poison, especially with the body load that LSD can induce in you. And like I say, many of us are wired up differently. Some people get quite an uncomfortable body load on certain psychedelics, whereas other people have immensely comfortable experiences during the trips. Like for me, mushrooms, many people describe them as being sort of relaxing, having a massaging type quality on the body, and a light body load, depending on the shrooms and the person. But for me, any shrooms I take really just gives me insane levels of nausea and quite an uncomfortable body load. But the mental effects, it's like my consciousness is being massaged and my body goes through a state of dysphoria. Also makes me tap into, I guess, my organs that may have taken a beating over the years from bad food I've had, and drinks and drugs, and just all of the poisonous stuff that we're unfortunately exposed to and that we directly consume. Even though I'm relatively healthy, I know that I could be healthier, and there's always more healing to be done, and shrooms sort of let me tap into that. LSD has more of a cosmic sort of sci-fi spacey feel, and maybe that's because it's synthesized. Yeah, interesting stuff. So Hoffman was reassured by a doctor who came round to his house, who detected no physical abnormalities, save for a pair of widely dilated pupils. So soon, Hoffman's terror began to give way to a sense of good fortune and enjoyment. As he later wrote, "Little by little I could begin to enjoy the unprecedented colours and plays of shapes that persisted behind my closed eyes. Kaleidoscopic, fantastic images surged in on me, alternating, variegated, opening and then closing themselves in circles and spirals, exploding in coloured fountains, rearranging and hybridizing themselves in a constant flux." The events of this first LSD trip, now known as Bicycle Day, in memory of Hoffman's bicycle ride home, proved to Hoffman that he had indeed made a significant discovery, a psychoactive substance with extraordinary potency, capable of causing significant shifts of consciousness in incredibly low doses. The term trip was first coined by US Army scientists during the 1950s when they were experimenting with LSD. Hoffman foresaw the drug as a powerful psychiatric tool because of its intense and introspective nature. He could not imagine anyone using it recreationally. Ooh, I bet that called out many of us within the raving community. Whole reason I got into LSD and psychedelics in general was through the party scene, because drugs and parties, festivals, raves, celebratory events, they go hand in hand with substances, of which there are many varieties. You've got the sort of classic recreational stuff, like cocaine, then into ketamine, cannabis, but then psychedelics are often sold by the same people who sell these, so that's literally just how I got into it. Back in the day, I couldn't imagine not using psychedelics recreationally. It was like the go-to substance range for enjoying festivals and raves. Once I realised that I enjoyed it way more than traditional recreational substances like MDMA and etc. But then, doing them more and more and more at more festivals and events, I realised how deep of a rabbit hole psychedelics can take you down, and then I started to treat them more like a spiritual tool for consciousness expansion, opening the mind, and doing shadow work. Bicycle Day is increasingly observed in psychedelic communities as a day to celebrate the discovery of LSD. Many people probably discovered LSD on Bicycle Day. This report is a case in point scenario of that. The celebration of Bicycle Day originated in DeKalb, Illinois, in 1985, when Thomas B. Roberts, then a professor at Northern Illinois University, coined the name Bicycle Day when he founded the first celebration at his home. Several years later, he sent an announcement made by one of his students to friends and internet lists, thus propagating the idea and the celebration itself. His intent at the time was to commemorate Hoffman's original accidental exposure on April 16th, but that date fell midweek and was not a good time for the party. So he chose the 19th to honour Hoffman's first intentional exposure. And then, obviously tomorrow, we've got 420, which is, I'd say it's unofficial, but is it pretty much the official let's smoke weed all over the globe day? So obviously gonna feature some cannabis type videos tomorrow, look forward to that. And for however you celebrate both of these psychotic holiday type events, just remember to be safe, cautious, approach everything with consciousness and wisdom, and let's all give big thanks to the Hoffmeister, Dr. Albert himself, for changing so many lives and the course of human history. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed this little report and some brief insights into the context surrounding Bicycle Day. But anyway, much love, namaste, all that jazz, and I shall see you on the other side.